Mike, thank you for coming today and taking a minute to talk with us about Braniff.
My pleasure.
We appreciate that. Could you give us, let me have what is your name?
Mike Carlozzi.
And what did you do for Braniff?
I was a pilot. I initially started off as an engineer on the Electra and then became a 7.2 engineer, a 7.2 co-pilot, 707 co-pilot, DC-8 co-pilot, 727 captain, DC-8 captain. And then in 82, I was in the 727 captaincy.
Blew the gamut of it, huh?
Yes, sir.
For sure. Well, I thought we'd take just a moment to kind of remember and talk about Don Maynard for just a minute. I know he was a really close and good friend of yours. And did you have anything to say to everyone about your time and with him, good story or anything like that? I kind of threw you off guard there. But
he was a gentleman and a mentor to a whole lot of the young pilots. One of Don's biggest traits that he tried to get across to everybody was how to be smooth. I'm sure you've been on airplanes where you're up at cruising altitude and the next thing you know you hear the power just jammed off and you jump down.
Mm-hmm.
He said that you should never know when there's a flight regime change. And one of the things I used to love about him is that when he would pull up to the gate and he would try and make it very, very smooth so you didn't get that foot forward. And you think that's easy. Next time you come to a stop sign, try it, and then try it with a jet that weighs maybe 70 tons. So it's a very interesting deal. He was very smooth. He mentored all the young pilots. He was part of the professional standards. I just can't say enough of nice things about the man.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I was lucky to have known him for the last 12 or 14 years, thank goodness, during his very active 80s and 90s.
Yeah,
he
I
was
first
never
met
not
him
active.
in 1967.
Wow.
So we've been friends for
50 years.
Over 50 years.
Yeah, well, we're sure going to miss him. We've lost a lot of the greats in the last,
Yeah.
just this year, we've lost a surprising amount of people. And big names,
Yeah.
in the company.
Yeah.
Mrs. Lawrence died. Mary Wells Lawrence died. Bob Culp.
Yeah.
We've lost, of course, Don. We had Hoppy. At the beginning of the year.
That was a very good presentation at the conference about Mary Wells. I found that very interesting.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. That was, I think, Henry Hartevelt that did that, and then she was put into the Hall of Fame. That's the first Hall of Fame member that we've ever had. She was the only one when we started the process that wasn't posthumous. And then she died in May, and she became posthumous.
Yeah.
Kind of an interesting factoid there, but it was great having her family come and do that and see everything. Did you get to meet the Lawrences?
I knew Mr. Lawrence from, he'd be on the airplane. He'd always come up to the cockpit and say hello. And that kind of stuff, and we'd go in the back and say hi to him and make sure that I always thought he was a great guy.
Yeah, I think most people say that. Yeah. There are just some, I think, got under his.
Well, people got mad because
moments.
he was running the show when it went downhill. But the thing, to me at least, that he was guilty of, he was trying to expand it and make it as big and as best as he could. And who knew that what was going to happen with Jimmy Carter?
Yeah, or who knew that American was going to begin their onslaught too, which certainly was not a good. When you're Davy and Goliath, I mean, it was in this particular case, it was.
We were beating American quite well until they started some of their games.
Yeah,
so
very true. Very true.
Water under the bridge, unfortunately.
Yeah, very, very much so, sir. It sure is. Okay, so tell me about your first flight. You said, I believe it was on the Electra. So tell us about that. What did you think about that?
Well, it was the rating ride. They didn't have simulators back then.
Yeah.
So it was a rating ride for Larry Vineyard. And we took off, and the nose wheel came off. One of the nose wheels came off. So the check airman said, well, we got to do, we can do everything except the landings. So we did all the air work, came back around, landed. They replaced the tire. And my first trip was landings for Captain Vineyard. So it was very, very interesting. The Electra was a fun airplane to be on.
I've heard that everyone just thought the world of that plane. Thought it was really great. It was like just an like a Beechcraft handling, I guess.
Yeah,
I guess would be the closest.
It was very smooth to fly.
On bear handling, yeah.
Way overpowered. It would stop
Yeah.
on a dime. I can't say enough nice things about it.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. So, what was the first flight you ever took? Ever?
I was 12, and my dad got me a trip we lived in New Jersey at the time, and he got me a trip down to Washington to the Smithsonian Museum.
Oh, cool.
And he was going down on business, so he brought me on board a TWA Super Constellation and introduced me to the, at the time they were called stewardesses,
Yeah, yeah.
and said it was his birthday present. And the stewardess took me up to the cockpit, introduced me to the captain, and the Connie cockpit was, every square inch had a gauge or a switch on it. So I was just awed over it. I thought this was so cool. And the captain said, "You going down for your birthday present?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, pointed to the jump seat and said, "Sit down." I got to ride down in the cockpit all the way down. I'll never, ever forget that.
Dream ride.
Dream
ride for a 12-year-old.
That's it. And when I started going to work for the airlines, I wanted to fly international. And at the time, I think this is an interesting deal, it was Pan Am, TWA, and Braniff
Yeah.
were the only 3 international carriers.
Mm-hmm.
And all 3 are gone now.
Yeah, very true. Very, very true. I remember when I used to fly, my grandmother lived in Hot Springs, Arkansas, so I went on Texas International.
Oh, yeah.
Up there through Shreveport, Texarkana, and that whole run. I'd make sure I'd have do some sort of drawing for the pilot because I knew that'd get me into the.
Yeah.
Worked every time.
It does. It does.
Worked every time, and I got most of them. That I'd get to go up to the front before we left, and then once we were airborne, up at altitude, they'd let me come back up there again and see
The
stuff.
times have changed.
Oh yeah, you could
so much. I mean, I remember when the hunters would come on with their rifles.
Oh yeah,
And say
it's
we
no big
didn't
deal.
want to check them. Would you mind if we kept them in the cockpit? Oh no, what do you got? And they'd take them out, show us all this stuff, and now, good Lord, if
they come unglued.
Yeah, they'd have a fit.
Oh yeah, Braniff even sold the rifle bags.
Yeah.
Remember on the boutique? Yeah, and now you'd never ever.
No.
What do you remember most about Braniff? What's the thing that comes to mind?
How much fun I had. I mean, if Harding knew how much fun we were having, he'd charge us to come to work.
Yeah.
It was just, I mean, out of the 2,000 pilots they had, there were maybe 5 that I didn't like. Everybody else were just really nice guys, and
yeah.
you know, especially when somebody like myself, where the biggest thing I'd ever flown was a DC-3 or a C-46,
Right.
and then come into my first airplane's a jet. You know, you'd say, "Oh, Lee," you know, when you finally get it on the ground. And I remember asking a captain one time, the weather was terrible, and it was my turn to fly because he alternated legs. And I told him, I said, "You know, you're not going to hurt my feelings if you want this leg." And he goes, "What are you here for?" I said, "Well, I'm willing to try, but I want you to know I'm new, you know, and I don't want to, you know, put you in a bad position." "No, you worry about it." He said, "If I get nervous, I'll tell you about it." So, but that was it. It was a lot of fun, good guys. Everywhere you went, it was just fun.
Right, exactly. And I think it is amazing to me as someone that has, you know, been a fan and now part of the company for since I was a kid, and I look at this today and I'm amazed that we're all still together here.
Yeah.
We're all still doing this, which I don't think many companies do.
No.
At 50 years out, 40 something years out now. You know, it's amazing. That
It
shows
is.
you what a very tight-knit group this was.
It was.
And very cool thing.
It was a whole lot of fun to work for.
That's fantastic. And I hear that a lot. I hear the people, I hear the camaraderie, just the type of company that it was, that it was shined better than the rest, you know, and it did. And that brought a lot of people, I think, to unique people together.
I couldn't agree more.
Brought a lot of unique people. So tell me, where did you do your flight training?
I learned to fly at a aero club in the United States Air Force. I went in as an enlisted man. And
what age? 18?
18 actually,
18.
Yeah. And had 1 year of college. Went in was trying for cadets, got transferred out to Vandenberg Air Force Base, and they had a very active aero club, and so I learned to fly there. I got all my ratings and was going to college at night, and then when I got out, I got a job flying Twin Beaches, DC-3s, C-46s, that type of equipment.
Okay.
And then about a year later, I applied for Braniff and got hired.
Wow, that's fantastic. That was 1967. Right?
65.
65. Okay.
I was
so,
the last class in 1965.
So you literally came in just as the end of the plane was
Just as it
going.
was starting.
Yeah, just really going there. That's fantastic. Well, let's see. So tell me about the training at Braniff. What was it complex? Was it a learning atmosphere?
It was a learning atmosphere. He's long gone now, but Jim Bailey was one of the head instructors, and my class was the last one to take the old 5-part flight engineer exam, which qualified you as turbojet, turboprop, and reset.
Okay.
So Mr. Bailey taught us the DC-6, the Electra, and the 707, and then we took the test, and then we were assigned a specific airplane by Braniff. In my case, it happened to be the Electra.
Yeah.
But it was very thorough, I thought.
Yeah.
They taught us what we needed to know, how to operate the airplane, and a lot of stuff that was nice to know rather than just need to know.
Did you ever get to meet Mr. Carlton? RV
No,
Carlton?
RV, yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Yeah. I hear nothing but great about him. I'm pretty good friends with his daughter now.
Oh.
She lives up in Nashville.
Well, he was the hierarchy. So
Oh, yeah. He was.
when you would meet him, it would be "Good afternoon, sir," and
Mhm.
back off.
Yeah, he was. I
This
think
guy.
he was Harding's assistant at that point.
Yeah.
65, chairman's assistant. Yeah.
Yeah, he was. These guys, when you stop and think what they did, one of my side specialties was I was in charge of safety at Braniff for the union.
Oh, okay.
And you can go to Embry-Riddle and look on their library and look under accidents under the old CAB, because the NTSB
Right.
didn't come in until I think it was 1965 or 66.
With our Electra accident.
Yes, sir.
68, yeah. Mm-hmm. Was the first DOT was our Electra accident.
Right.
Yeah.
And you go back and see what RV and all the senior people flew. They'd take off somewhere and they'd never be heard from again.
Yeah.
Or if they did find them, they found, well, the propeller came off and it went through the other engine and it did this, it did that, it did the other thing. So it was, they were a special breed.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
Absolutely
they were.
we have no idea what they went through.
1931. Can you imagine
Yeah.
that? Is when he arrived.
I wasn't born till 1942.
Wow. See.
So
Yeah, he was legendary.
Yeah.
For sure. That is for sure. What were the members of management or other colleagues that you admired? Doesn't have to be someone in management. It could be someone else you admired. People. Specific people.
I liked Cotton Safert,
I've read
Jim
about him quite a
Peckham.
bit. Uh-huh.
Who else? Jack. Oh gosh, I'll think of his name in a second.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about.
They were all very senior pilots, and they were dealing with a whole bunch of young, for back then, kids.
A whole bunch of them at once.
And they treated us as such,
Yeah.
Now, son, don't you worry about it. Everything's going to be all right, And one of the
Dads, like mentoring sons.
Yeah, one of my
great.
favorite stories involved Cotton, and I was flying with Don Walker, who was a Panagra pilot. There was a Don Walker Braniff and a Don Walker Panagra,
Okay.
and I was flying with the Panagra Don Walker.
Okay.
And we come in off a trip, and there's a "Please see me at your earliest convenience," Cotton. And we're trying to think, what did we do wrong? Because that's
Uh-oh.
you always assume that you've done something really stupid. So we all agree we'll go see him the next day, and we put on our suits and all that stuff and
Good. Yeah.
show up. Now, Captain Saber, you wanted to see us, and he come in, and he's going through a stack of paper trying to find out why he called us in, and it turns out Don had authorized the flight attendants to give free drinks to everybody, and he didn't have the okay from dispatch
up front,
or
front office.
the head agent.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm the co-pilot and the flight engineer. We're just sitting there with our hands in our lap, and Don goes, "That's what you called us in for?" And we're just sitting there. He's talking to Cotton this way, and Cotton goes, "Yeah." And he says, he reaches in his pocket, takes out his checkbook, and says, "How much do I owe you?" Well, now the engineer and I are cracking up. We think this is hysterical.
It is hysterical.
And Cotton's going, no, don't get mad. I'm just supposed to find out.
Right.
No, how much? A couple of hundred, But anyway, management was good. I mean, we screw up all the time, and they never were too serious about it.
Well, that was probably a good thing. I mean, that was probably a good company community service type thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was for a delay or something like that.
Oh yeah, I mean,
that's good stuff. Yeah.
I was a DC-8 captain. We're going from Panama down to Buenos Aires, and the senior steward comes up and says, we're 40 meals short. And I said, we can't go on a 6-hour trip, 40 meals. So he says, no, they're on board. I said, no, they're not. And then in the interim, we're pushing back. And I said, pull us back into the gate. We got to have the meals.
Yeah.
He says, you're going to take a delay. And I'm thinking, well, it's 40 meals is 40 meals. And just as we pull up to the gate, the steward opens. He says, I found the meals. So we get to Buenos Aires. I send a message to the chief pilot, who happened to be Jim Peckham at the time. Get back to Dallas 4 or 5 days later. Put on my suit, wandering. Yes, sir. Do you understand you'd like to see me? Right. So I explained what went on. He says, well, next time, listen to what the people are telling you. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to argue with the man. I said, of course, yes, sir, never again, But it's stuff like that. I mean,
But if they hadn't had those 40 meals, to me, that would have been I know I would be upset if I was on a flight that long and didn't have my food.
But I think
you were right.
Yeah, they never got really too upset with it.
Right. They were just like,
yeah. So.
that type of thing. Those are some fantastic stories. Did you ever fly Mac?
I flew the Atlantic Mac.
You flew out of Mac. Oh, okay. Well, you have anything from that era? That was 727s on that,
just
right?
flying the 727s on the North Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
And all sorts of stories, but I mean...
Cold.
Very cold. The coldest I ever saw it was about 47 below zero up in Thule, Greenland.
Thule, yeah. Isn't that where they always hangered the thing in there at the air base, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they used that yellow, I forgot what the name was.
7271, the Yellowbird.
7271, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. And we an interesting story was we were in Germany, and we'd flown over there, and we're going to deadhead back, and we're on Pan Am 707, and we're sitting on the ground, and we take off, and the captain invites us all up to the cockpit because it's the first 707 with inertial nav, and we'd come across with a navigator, and the captain on Pan Am is telling us that if we don't do a thing, we won't miss New York by more than 7 miles. And we're just, wow, I mean, how cool is that?
Pretty cool.
Well,
back
then. And today,
Yeah.
The same standard is plus or minus 3 feet.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, a lot has changed in the last 50 years.
Oh, a massive amount changed in the 50 years before that. Our industry is definitely interesting, but yet we still have basically the same standards and the same things. Those things haven't changed. That's what's
I mean, if you look at the safety record now, we haven't had an accident since the Colgan one up in Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, it's been years, that is for sure. And you did fly LAD.
I did.
That's Latin America division.
Yeah.
So you have any others? I know you tell us about the meal thing. Do you have any story that you remember or anything about that? I know that was our premier system for sure.
No, I probably the most interesting deal. We were going to Buenos Aires again, nonstop out of New York, and the agent told us we're going to be a few minutes late. We're waiting on a couple of passengers,
right?
And a few minutes later, this light twin pulls in front of the airplane, and all these guys come piling out, and they come running up onto the airplane, and the cockpit door opens. It's Muhammad Ali, and he says, "Sorry, thanks for waiting," and he closes the door, and we push back, and off we go. And about an hour or so into the flight, the steward comes up and tells us, "You know what he's doing?" I go, "No, what?" He goes, "He's in the back with Bundini, who was his assistant, with a Polaroid, getting pictures taken with every passenger and signing them." And you wonder why he's such a popular individual.
Yeah.
And then when we get to Buenos Aires, I come out of the cockpit, and there's Muhammad standing at the door saying goodbye to all the passengers,
Everybody.
shaking their hands. And so that was
That's good
cool.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of interesting things.
Yeah, yeah. So were there a lot of VIPs that flew on those routes that you remember?
Yeah.
That's what I've heard. I noticed a lot of our photographs in the archives, VIP photos are usually either in Dallas or they're in Latin America.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Well, back then we had one side of South America, Pan Am had the other,
Yeah.
and the reputation enjoyed by a lot of the South American carriers precluded people from flying on them, or people try to avoid them, I should say.
Yes, right.
And so we had, between us and Pan American, we pretty much had all the celebrities. And
Right. Well, that's great. So now, what about the merger with Panagra? Were you flying? No, you weren't anywhere near flying that route then. What years did you fly LAD?
60 or 76
Okay, so it was after Panagra.
through 77, and I was a co-pilot down there in the early 70s.
Ah, okay.
So
All right. So not long after the Panagra merger there. Did you ever fly in Braniff's first 747, our beloved 601 BM?
when we got the Concorde, because Braniff was going to operate it, the Airline Pilots Association said, we want to be there for the certification series. And because I was the safety chairman for ALPA at Braniff, I got to go. And it was Marion Griffith, myself, and 2 or 3 other guys. I can't remember their names right now. But anyway, I got to ride in the cockpit going over to London. It was pretty interesting.
That's cool.
And,
yeah. Another thing they said we couldn't do. Oh, there's no way you can fly that with one 747, 18 hours a day.
Yeah.
We did. Whenever they'd tell Harding something he couldn't do, he'd do it.
That was throwing down the gauntlet.
That is for sure. What was your favorite Braniff airplane?
To fly the 727.
727.
Yeah, I've got over 10,000 hours on it, and it was just fun airplane to fly. It did everything he asked it to do. Nothing bad.
Just felt like a glove.
Yeah.
Fit like a glove.
And the DC-8 was a nice airplane to fly too.
Yeah, I've heard people love that.
Because
I
it
love
was
I love that plane.
it was a tank, and it performed very well at high altitude. Coming out of La Paz and Quito could be exciting.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I can imagine that. So what did you think about Braniff's Concorde service?
I think it was fun. After Braniff, I had several jobs, and one of which was with American Transair.
Yeah.
And on American Transair, I actually got to fly the Concorde as a passenger, which was so much fun. I mean, from Kennedy to De Gaulle, 3 hours and 33 minutes.
Yeah, fast.
And
I mean, even with our stop in Washington, we still cut off over an hour.
Yeah.
Which was shocking. Yeah. With changing the registration, the number, and all the in number and all that stuff, it was a pretty remarkable little setup they had going.
It was.
That took some monumental movement of government to get that approved. I don't know if you were ever involved in all the planning process.
None of that stuff. No, not at all.
Let me tell you what, we've gotten all these legal records from Braniff in about 1,300 boxes now. And I've pulled all the Concorde story of what went on, the negotiation and everything. And I'm actually going to write an article about that, so I won't tell you all about it right now. But I am working on it. But it was a feat, let's say that. And that led to where eventually, soon after that, you no longer had to be a registered U.S. aircraft to operate a foreign aircraft here.
Yep.
Because Braniff too was operating some of those Bucks from Guinness Peak with a Great Britain registration number on it. Yep. So Very interesting thing, that whole Concorde thing. So just stay tuned for that story because I'll have it out.
Good.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Let's see. Did you? You talked about celebrities. So did you have another celebrity story that was beyond the Muhammad Ali that you remember?
Probably the person I flew with the most was Joe DiMaggio.
Okay, I've heard a lot of. He flew on us a lot.
He was with us quite frequently.
Yeah.
Between Dallas and New York.
New York. Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. He was always immaculately dressed. I mean, like he stepped off the cover of GQ. He was always very polite to anybody who came up to him. He'd be happy to sign an autograph. He was very nice to the flight attendants. He was just a nice guy.
Wow.
Exxon Perlman I met. He actually had he bought a seat for his violin. And
I've heard that one before. I've
yeah,
heard that.
everybody was very, very nice. I mean, so
that's really great. That's cool to hear that. Yeah, it's amazing the stars that we have. I remember Lucille Ball. She was a regular, coming through Dallas. I think she would connect in Dallas. I think she liked to stop. And
could be
at the lounge, and then she would connect with us and go to New York.
I don't remember her. I flew I was the pilot for the Houston Oilers for 12 years.
Oh, okay.
So I got to meet a lot of the astronauts, which was pretty interesting. I got them to sign my logbook and all that stuff. And
there you go.
They were an interesting group.
Yeah, that is fantastic.
Probably the nicest of the group, and they were all very nice. But
yeah.
The nicest was I think Wally Schirra. I mean, he was just a character. He couldn't care less about anything.
That's great. That is fantastic. What was your favorite Braniff ad campaign of the eras? And that
the one with the little old lady in first class taking everything and putting it in her bag.
Yeah. So the end of the plane.
Yeah.
Yeah. That seems to be
I thought that was hysterical, and then at the end she's driving away on the tug with the airplane. I thought that was pretty cool.
That was, that woman lived until well into the early 2000s.
Wow.
She was nearly 100 when she died. I can't think of her name to save my life. It's in the files. I'll get it and send it to you.
It was a very, very good ad, though. I remember that.
Oh, it's brilliant. All those that Mary Wells did were just over.
She's a very smart woman.
Yes. And even when she came back 78, that was some great stuff. Remember the walking promenade where they had the cruise at T-Dawn there and that whole group walking the promenade in every city around the world, marching together. It was brilliant. And then the food one. Remember the thing about the food? They handpicked the food, which they really did.
Yeah, I can imagine.
They really did.
Yeah.
And it was amazing, that stuff that she came up with there. Truly an amazing on that. All right, so here's the last question here, next to the last. Where were you on May 12, 1982? 12 and 13, I guess. Yeah.
I don't know. Did you know Frank Stone?
Yes, and I
Frank Stone was, besides being a captain, also owned the bar called the Flyboy in the Cockpit.
That's it. Okay, that's what I know.
In the mid-70s, Frank asked me to be his partner. So I was...
So you were a cockpit?
Yeah.
Oh,
I owned
cool.
50% of the cockpit. And I was sitting in the cockpit drinking a beer, and the guy came in and said, they're recalling all the airplanes. And he said, I guess we're going bankrupt. And I made the famous statement, don't be ridiculous, billion-dollar companies don't go bankrupt.
Yeah, they didn't used to.
And boy, was I wrong.
Yeah.
So by the time the evening was over, there were probably 75 people in the bar.
I bet.
And,
now, it's still there, isn't it?
It is, but
it's not at all like what it was.
A bunch of Southwest guys I left. Frank sold it to a bunch of Southwest guys who sold it to another group who sold it to another group who now own it. But it's still there on Marsh Lane.
Yeah.
Just
right
north of Northwest Highway.
Mm-hmm. Right there by Target, right?
Yeah.
And they're kind of in their lot thing there, yeah. Yeah, that was a tough time. What did you do that summer after the company closed? Were you hopeful that Braniff was that this was a brief thing and they would be back in the air? Did you believe that?
I didn't have time May of '82 was Braniff went bankrupt on May 12th. On May 19th, my son died, and on May 29th, my wife filed for divorce.
Oh, goodness.
So
gracious.
May of
I'm
'82
sorry.
was a
rough time.
difficult month.
Yeah.
So I had to get a job immediately. So I flew corporate for about 45 days. I'd applied to the NTSB, so I was hired by the NTSB as an accident investigator out of Miami. And I did that for a while, and then decided I want to get back into flying. Came back to the Dallas area, flew Learjets, and then was a DC-8 instructor pilot, and then went to work for GE as an engineering pilot, and then went to work for American Transair until I hit 60, and then flew corporate, and then went to work for the FAA.
So when did you retire permanently from flying?
3 years ago next month,
Oh gosh, it's 3
I
years.
was 79.
Wow, that's fantastic. Fantastic. That is a great story. Interesting. There was a gentleman down. I'm sure you probably met him one time. He was the one assigned to Braniff in Miami from the DEA. You know, they all had an assigned officer and who they were watching was Griselda Blanco. Remember
I remember
the
that
first
name.
female that was ever in a head of a cartel or whatever. There's been stories about her. We licensed them because she liked to fly herself and her drugs on Braniff, or attempted to do it.
I never had any drug issues with Braniff.
Yeah.
Never.
And he told me, he said it was just a constant battle and watch with her continuously to make sure that they weren't. And he said, I'm sure they got stuff through that we just never even knew that they had done.
Yeah.
And but it was interesting because we arranged for him to interview for the movie, to assist in that movie about her. You should watch it. I'm trying to think what it was called. There were two of them. One of them had Catherine Zeta-Jones in it, played Griselda Marcos, and then Griselda Blanco. So if you might watch that, I think they're on
I'll look it up.
Netflix. Yeah. Pretty interesting stuff there. Let's see. Do you have anything else you'd like to share?
No, just I was there for almost 20 years and I had a great time, met a lot of great people, flew to a lot of neat places, and when I look back on my time at Braniff, I have nothing but nice things to say about them, to think about them. I think I'm a pretty good pilot, and for that I owe the senior captains at Braniff, because they made me today what I am.
Yeah, there you go. Well, sir, thank you very much, and we appreciate you stopping by today and taking time to
My pleasure.
discuss this. This will be, we'll put it on our YouTube page coming soon. We try to do this stuff for Christmas, so we have a lot of our older folks that like, I send out emails and things.
Which YouTube is this? The
Braniff Airways Foundation
Okay.
YouTube. Yeah, you can find it. I've got to send a link out to everyone. We've put up over 300 Braniff films that people have never seen before from our archives. Yeah. Commercials that were never aired, all kinds of things like that. So I'm going to send a link out probably this coming week for everyone to start looking, so they can start looking at that and see there's foundation stuff on there. There's Braniff Airways, there's Braniff Inc., there's Braniff 3, there's training films, there's stuff you thought you'd never see again. They're there.
Yeah.
So anyway, so be looking for that on that.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
sir. We appreciate it.